Welcome to Shaping Healthcare, a podcast by CitiusTech. I'm your host, Laurel Rockel. Welcome back. Today is the first episode in the CitiusTech.ai series, and it dives into a critical question: AI COEs, the possibilities that they unlock, the pitfalls to avoid, and their role in scaling the impact of AI across organizations. Joining me today is Sridhar Turaga, Senior Vice President of Data, Analytics, and AI at CitiusTech, and the co-leader of the Gen AI Task Force. With over 5 years dedicated to CitiusTech, Sridhar has been pivotal in advancing the integration of data, cloud, and AI to transform healthcare delivery worldwide. Today, we'll be exploring his perspective on how organizations can structure themselves to truly unlock the potential of AI at scale and the role that COEs can play in that transformation. Sridhar, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Laurel. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Great to see you as well, too. You are the perfect person to be speaking to about this as the co-leader of the Gen AI Task Force. COEs have long been the go-to construct for facilitating the adoption of new technologies, including AI. However, their success has been mixed. Some cases, COEs have created some high ROI use cases. In others, they may have become bloated, slow, or disconnected from the business's needs. With the rise of Gen AI and now Agentic AI, organizations are now asking, is setting up a COE for these technologies fundamentally different from what we've done for traditional AI ML or smart automation? Also, can we build on existing constructs, or is a completely new approach needed? So in our episode together, we're going to unpack these questions and explore how organizations can design COEs that truly enable AI at scale and avoid the common traps that limit their effectiveness. So Sridhar, I think the best place to start is with a definition. Can we start with what your definition of a COE is?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great topic. Excited to have this conversation. So, let me first start with at least three things everybody agrees on, because there is so much debate around this topic of agentic AI, Gen AI, and impact in healthcare and other places. So, let's at least start with three things that I would say most people agree on, and then we'll kind of build the argument for why COE is worth looking at. The first thing I think most people will agree is that 2.5 years ago, with the advent of the foundation models in their current form, chat gpt and everything else that followed, there is a general acceptance that there is an ability to build AI that has significantly increased, both in terms of range, the number of things you can do with AI. Now you can talk to data. It was possible but harder before. You can work with documents. It was possible but it's easier now. And you can build assists and so on. So generally, let's accept that about 2.5 years ago, the ability to do AI in its new avatar and the capabilities have exploded. It's become, the range has increased, the possibilities have increased, and the feasibility is increased. So that's most people will agree on. Let's also agree on the fact that there's a general intuition that a lot of processes where there is, either there is human expertise, there is tribal knowledge, lots of places where we couldn't automate because it's very hard or it was unaffordable. There's an intuition that we can automate. Now there are arguments that at best we can achieve 10 to 15% more improvement. Others believe you can drive 10x improvement and reimagine. We'll not go into that debate, but let's generally agree that there's a mass scale adoption and impact possible to a large number of problems and processes. Let's also agree that there are new risks, challenges that we have now encountering, because this is new technology. It works differently than before. It has its own costs and challenges, and there is compliance issues, there is hallucination issues, ability to control it, and the consistency. So let's just accept that yes, this is truly enabling a lot more AI that you can do. You can take on a larger number of problems and drive enterprise wide impact, but yet there are new challenges we've not encountered. So if you take those as three starting premises, then the question becomes, how do you adopt this at scale? Now, there are many strategies. One could take the approach of everybody going at it and seeing what happens, or you could pick a few initiatives and go at it. One of the construct I think that's worth looking at and seems to have a lot of success is to build a COE, a center of excellence. So I will first start with the classic definition of center of excellence, that this is a group, preferably a cross functional group. Now, the composition in this case could be different than it was before. It's usually a technology leader, a business leader, and a continuous improvement leader, driving an organizational wide task force that identifies opportunities, redirects efforts, lays foundation, and drives the adoption of AI and impact of AI across the organization. So I would say that's like a well accepted definition of a center of excellence, and that's existed for smart automations, existed for AI and other technologies as well. However, I think there's a second definition of COE that is also worth looking at. If you go back to the first three premises that I made, I think there is an opportunity to drive enterprise wide participation and enterprise wide adoption. And if you believe that every nurse can now access clinical guidelines at the edge, and a nurse, skills, can be enhanced with that. Or if you believe that a revenue cycle management team that's handling denials will, rather than look through variety of documents and policies and contracts, can now work off an assist. Or a physician is looking for quick access to clinical guidelines at the care edge, and so on. If you believe that everybody is kind of having some form of AI assist next to them, then you will also have to think about the fact that it can't be done in a central manner. You will also have to think about it as a play on words, circle of execution. You have to also think about the fact that yes, there's a center of excellence, standards, capability to be built, like all we've always built COEs. But I also think that there's need for a circle of execution mindset, which is how do we expand the number of players, capabilities, teams, initiatives, projects, platforms that are participating in this journey of adopting AI. I think if you take that second definition of COE, that this is about expanding the circle of execution to really feel impact at scale for the possibility in front of us, I think that therein probably lies the difference. So, yes, it is like all the other CEOs we've attempted, but we could approach it in a certain way. It has succeeded or failed depending on variety of reasons. But if you think of it as circle of execution, then I think you take it with a slightly different mindset and you approach it differently. So that's kind of what I would call as the new definition of COE: circle of execution around AI in your organization.
That's a really excellent second definition. Really adds a lot more context and depth for what the teams are doing. Absolutely. And I think that gives us a really excellent starting point for our conversation and base of information. Something that you mentioned when, not looking at just a few key initiatives and looking at the greater context of Gen AI and Agentic, why do you advocate for these COEs in the context of Gen AI and Agentic AI, rather than focusing on those few key initiatives? And also then how is it any different than the existing smart automation that organizations have, or like the dedicated AI teams that they have?
Yeah. I think first of all, if an organization has already had success in smart automation, RPA or any other form of smart automation, or has had any success in the past in other forms of driving adoption of technology and impact of technology, we absolutely build on that because there is a certain organization DNA and muscle and a method there. But I think there are a few new things to think about. Um, because AI can now be made available in a variety of situations. First and foremost, whether you like it or not, every platform, software, product that you're using in your organization, from recruitment to training, to transaction systems to reporting systems, they're all adding AI capabilities. So whether you like it or not, it's coming everywhere. Now, some of it you may agree, you may not agree. Some of it you may like, you may not like. Some of it may have crept in without you realizing it, but everybody is embedding AI across the organization, and it's spread faster than you would expect. So you have to just deal with that fact that it is there everywhere. It's creeping in through a lot of third party solutions, and you need a mechanism to evaluate, determine, maybe even protect every stakeholder who is adopting it, whether they asked for it or not, whatever be the why behind it. So I think that's one big difference, because in the past, when you did a, let's say, an RPA center of excellence, there was a license cost that controlled the use of RPA development and bots. Nobody would wake up elsewhere and start implementing RPA on their own, but here they are implementing agentic AI and Gen AI and summarization and search and chatbots everywhere. So there is that happening for sure. I think the second big difference is that even from a skill perspective, in prior versions of AI, there was a deep data science expertise required to be able to build, train, validate, deploy a model. Today, there are many capabilities that strong engineering teams, product engineering teams, cloud engineering teams, under the guidance of appropriate AI experts, can build AI solutions, because in some ways foundation models are like the new operating system for AI. You can build AI solutions much faster, much more easily than before. So a lot more people want to participate and will participate in development of AI solutions in the organization. So the numbers are much, much wider and much larger. And lastly, the nature of Gen AI and agentic AI is that it is for the first time making it easier to deal with some of the knowledge centric tasks. The prior versions of AI, in many cases, were quantitative decision models. They were on structured data, making decisions, around, should I approve a loan or not, or should I do a prior auth approval or not. So they were more of, I would say, quantitative decisions. But today you are talking about somebody can look through all the documentation and find the relevant information, or someone can look through patient charts and summarize it. So a lot more, I would say, human experts of variety of roles are encountering AI, supporting them, enabling them, assisting them, and maybe partly automating some of their activities. Now, you can argue about whether we will accomplish 20% automation or 10x automation. It doesn't matter. But nobody can deny the fact that a lot more people are participating and benefiting from the use of AI now with Gen AI and Agentic AI. So if you take that premise that a lot more people are now going to participate, then you have to really think about an organization structure where the COE is able to handle this larger adoption, of sorts. So I think that's what is fundamentally different, because in the past, the technology was more controlled, and now I think it's much more available, and a lot more, not more entry points into the organization. And that's where I think having that structure upfront is very important. Otherwise, you would end up driving adoption, and take on risks in the organization that may be hard to control or undo down the line. But at the same time, not doing is not an option either, because it's very soon cost of being in business. You have no choice.
Those are excellent insights, Sridhar. Yeah, absolutely. And from your experience, what has worked well with some of your clients when setting up and running a COE? Or, maybe also what's maybe not worked so well too? What are some of those common challenges with that?
Yeah. So let me first maybe just define, who does what in this construct, and then kind of the what works, what doesn't work, kind of, becomes apparent. On the left, you have a centralized organization of experts, who are, part of, let's say, a COE organization. And on the right, you have the end stakeholders, could be platform teams, could be operations teams, or maybe even end patients members experiencing these solutions. So on the left, and this is the middle part, which what do you do together? What is federated? So we'll leave the middle part for a second. What is unambiguously should be centralized first and foremost is, governance, quality control, security undoubtedly should be centralized, including evaluation of third party solutions, the methodology framework for responsible AI. If you don't centralize, then you are essentially creating risks in the organization that would be hard to control one project at a time or one solution at a time. There's no doubt about that. The second thing that is also probably important to centralize is, at least depending on the maturity of the organization, if it's being done for the first time, the mechanism to determine where investments are allocated, what is the prioritization, maybe centrally, maybe in this, maybe together, but for sure, the tracking of the initiatives, the measure of success and the progress should absolutely be done centrally. The third thing that is probably also worth doing centrally is incubation, experimentation, because what you don't want is variety of experiments and confusing learnings in this journey, because it's a rapidly evolving space, and there are galore questions around: should you do it on your data platform, should you do it on your cloud platform, which foundation model should you use, which agentic framework should you adopt, should you use the studio that the cloud provider is giving you, should you use a third party studio, how do you deal with legacy applications, what about my RPA investment, should I extend my RPA? I think these decisions around stack and architectural choices should probably be done centrally, till there is enough maturity in this space, and we may be 2 to 3 years away from that. um, the other thing that is also worth thinking about centrally is, specialized expertise and capability development, because you want to kind of bring some common learning. So these are very obvious, you have to do centrally. I think what you have to do at the edges, in the functions, platforms, or the operations, or the business stakeholders, or the domains, is identification of initiatives, identification of opportunities for automation with AI, um, uh, and adoption, and change management and process reengineering, and value realization absolutely has to be here, because at the end of the day, it's accelerating a process or an initiative or a platform. Then there's a gray zone of what do you do together. So I think that's really organizational structure. So that's where lots of choices have to be made, like who funds this, should you do it together, at the beginning, should you fund it centrally and then make it joint funding, should you execute together, at what point do you hand over to the edges, what point do you execute centrally, what if it's just a third party solution, who's the one who determines the requirements, and so on. So those are, I think, circumstantial and organizational. I think if you can establish that structure, and there is no answer for these questions in the middle, what's the center is very clear, what's at the edge is very clear. Every organization first and foremost should determine who owns the middle part, and how do these you know uh, the functions and the domains participate with the centralized organization, and how do that interplay work. I think is very important to determine. I would say that's a basic construct. I think what works, I have seen work very well, is also try and link all your initial experiments, initiatives to, I think, known problems. I think there's a tendency in a lot of organizations to want to take on esoteric problems and unsolved problems with Gen AI and AI, and that's probably appropriate for certain organizations that have very strong DNA of R&D. But I would almost argue that you should pick the most boring, most well defined, most sure shot problems or opportunities which you absolutely know what measure of success looks like. Prior attempts of automation have failed or hit a wall, and you believe, if you believe that this will make progress, that's what you attempt. The second, I think, important thing is, how do you determine an MVP? So that's a second very important thing. I think a lot of people determine MVPs as proof of concept, like, does the technology work? Of course the technology works, but the question is that at the end of the MVP, do you have enough clarity to make a go no go on the solution? Do you know how to determine whether this solution can scale? Can you afford? Does it generate the ROI as you see it? Do you have the data for it? Would you be willing to make the change required to adopt it, and so on? I think that's very important to determine as well. I think a few other things that I think go a long way is really determining measure of success. What is the language for measure of success? Because it's not always that it's about cost reduction or job elimination. I think that's the popular narrative out there, and that's just sometimes very distracting. There are other values that people are realizing. For example, consistency. Take in the healthcare space, people have clinical guidelines, care pathways, but everybody kind of adopts it with varying degrees. And at that point of care, people may not exactly follow the guidelines that are available. So driving consistency is a huge opportunity with generative AI and assists, and that's a huge opportunity. Another huge opportunity really is to convert these esoteric, human expert knowledge, could be contracts, policies, which you always need human experts to look through and interpret and really make them more accessible and machine readable. That could be an opportunity. The other opportunity could be fungibility, a big unlock because of generative AI and agentic AI is the level one knowledge required can now be made available, which means people can move across silos and functions more easily. Even in technology, people with a certain skill can now work on another skill. Same holds for member support. Same holds for a care process, or any other physical process, because sometimes expert knowledge prevents people from crossing the level one threshold, so you don't have the fungibility. There are other cases where you can eliminate legacy debt, a process debt or a technology debt. So I would say, what is your measure of success? Now, there are, of course, also measures of success around impact to a patient, impact to a member, impact to a care team member, impact to the organizational ability to onboard. One of our customers is looking at onboarding time of their customers, and if they reduce onboarding time, it not only gives value to customer faster for a platform company, but also revenue realization. So it's not about eliminating cost or eliminating jobs, but reducing the onboarding time. So I would say determining the measure of success and being savvy about it is important. So I think these are some of the, I would say, things that have worked well. Um, a few traps. I think having a very open-ended point of view on the stack and continuously experimenting with new technologies every day is a temptation, because there is something new coming up every 3 months. There is development, but I think that creates a lot of dissipation of energy. I would just pick a core stack, stay the course, because everybody in 3 to 4 months is equalizing capability these days, so you won't go wrong one way or the other, unless you really want to run experiments on a small scale. If you really want to scale, you don't want to keep chasing every new protocol, every new capability. I think that's a trap that you can fall into. The other trap that one can fall into is over investing in foundation platform development before you get to end use cases or end solutions, and just kind of trying to build this mega foundation in place and controls in place before anybody gets started. You never get done. But on the flip side, just focusing on end solutions also, without having a structure for the foundation, doesn't work either. So I feel that everybody ignores the middle part, which is, what are my reusable playbooks? What are my reusable agents? So for example, in the healthcare space, one reusable scenario we encounter is clinical summarization. Comes up in every use case. You are summarizing patient information or member information, or extraction of contract guidelines comes up in every different place, or interpretation of guidelines, care pathway guidelines in measuring adherence comes up everywhere. So what is your strategy to build those lego blocks that everybody uses? Because just over indexing on technology foundation, or just swinging to the other end and just doing executing project by project, is also a trap. I think the middle, it's just like when you go to the gym, they say strengthen your core. I think strengthening the core is very important. I think the last trap really goes back to what I said, circle of execution. I think while it is great to want to bring structure and having this deep expertise at the center, Too much of centralization can also be a trap. I think the attempt has to be to enable larger part of the organization, and I think expanding that circle of execution is a trap. I'll just make one last comment on a trap that I often see is I call it the roadmap trap. I think you can make endless roadmaps as an organization, but this is different. A lot of organizations don't have intuition yet. Actually, many of us don't have intuition yet. Even though we are immersed in this space, we're still learning and it's evolving. So to think that you can just create a roadmap and do an as is to be and just kind of traditional thinking doesn't go very far. You have to go on a road trip. You have to try. You have to develop your intuition. So I would love to print a T-shirt just says "Go on a road trip, don't make roadmaps." I think is important. So organizational muscle to define, design, test, roll out, adopt, and then discover how to scale is a very unique journey because Gen AI and Agentic AI are really in some ways accelerating those knowledge pockets in the organization is very organization specific. So unless you do it, you won't be able to scale. So I think these are probably I would say what I see working very well and what traps I see companies fall into.
They're all excellent and very important points, and thank you so much for sharing your insight, Sridhar. I like the roadmap trap. I think that's a very important and a great way to remember some of those pitfalls that can happen. It's clear that COEs really can play a pivotal role when scaling AI and agentic AI, but they need to be thoughtfully designed and executed. So, Sridhar, before we close, any final advice for organizations looking to embark on this journey?
I would, think about. I mean, we're cricket fans. Some of people are baseball fans. So you can't win a game waiting for a home run. You can't win a game of cricket just wanting to hit sixes on every ball. So you will have to score the singles. So one way to think about this journey of really getting value is what I call as a 10% NAI and a 10x AI. I think organizations that are succeeding, in my opinion, are simultaneously pursuing a 10% agenda and a 10x agenda. You have to get that day-to-day wins, the 10%, the 5% improvement. No shame in that because you can score lots of singles with that. And then you'll also have to put your mind to what are some services, processes, platforms that can truly be imagined to be AI first and 10x. I don't think the game will be won either by just going after the 10x and just hoping for that 10x because there are lots of obstacles and challenges and serendipity in finding that path to 10x. But at the same time, I think the just hoping that all these 10% will move the needle also won't work because you will get disrupted by your competitor, or an alternate business model. So I would say this dual path of living with this contradiction of 10% and 10x is kind of I would that's probably would be my mantra on chasing this.
That's an excellent analogy and example to give. So thank you. Sridhar, I've had such a wonderful time speaking with you today. It's always a pleasure discussing these things with you. And I thank you so much for your insights and bringing your knowledge to our show today. Thank you so much. The Shaping Healthcare podcast is brought to you by CitiusTech, a leader in healthcare consulting and IT services. To find out more about CitiusTech, visit citiustech.com. To listen to more interesting insights on healthcare technology and innovations, search and subscribe to the Shaping Healthcare podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want to share any feedback or would like to be featured in our podcast, do write to us at citiusvision@citiustech.com.